So we are back with a smaller Final Fantasy news roundup where we talk about the reemergence of the Final Fantasy IX animated series as we've gotten some more details on what the show will entail and even what it's going to be called. And we also have some interesting words from Naoki Hamaguchi about the PS5 version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth continuing to receive more updates in the future. So let's talk about it. So we start off first with the Final Fantasy IX animated news, and this is coming to us from Mikhail Madnani of RPG Site, where they go on to write that the show will be titled Black Mage's Legacy, and it's currently in development, not production, with a new studio by the name of Euro Visual. Now, it's important to point out that distinction. It's still being developed, meaning they're ironing out a lot of the details of what the show is going to be, probably still writing scripts, and then eventually they will need to animate, cast, and they're hoping to release it by 2028. So production should go into effect maybe later this year, maybe early next year. And this has had a pretty troubled history. It was initially at a French studio, which unfortunately since then has been shut down and has seemingly found a new home with Euro Visual. It's going to be one season, 10 episodes, with each episode being about 22 minutes. Now, the show is licensed by Square Enix, but they don't have any involvement in the actual production, so that could be good, could be bad. We don't really know for sure. Now, the show is said to be aimed at a much younger audience, but the synopsis does sound kind of dark, and it's still very in line with a lot of the themes that Vivi experienced in Final Fantasy IX. And the story itself will take place after the events of that game. So let's check out the synopsis, where they go on to write, Emil, Coln, Luciola, Thea, Fala, and Doc, children of the hero Bibi, which from what I can remember, the Japanese pronunciation of Vivi, I believe, is Bibi, so that's why they wrote Bibi, but for us, it's Vivi, are the last dark mages of the 4 continents. Today, they live happily in the city of Alexandria, guarded by its inhabitants who are rather friendly, although sometimes very curious. Unfortunately, this peaceful existence was not meant to last. One day, Coln discovers Mel, frozen like a statue, in the inn where he works. Could it be the tragic legacy of their father catching up with them? So, looking back at Final Fantasy IX, wonderful game, love the story. Vivi, one of the best characters in all of Final Fantasy in my opinion, has a really dark story of dealing with who he is, what he is, where he comes from, and this notion that eventually he will just stop working, which is incredibly dark. And spoiler alert for those who haven't played FF9, by the end of that game's story, Vivi is no longer with us. He has passed on, but he seemingly has children, which is a really bittersweet kind of ending. But Vivi eventually comes to terms with all of that. He's grateful for the journey that he's had, the people that he's gotten to know, and the fact that he helped save the world. So even though he ceases to exist, he still leaves on a very happy note. So it's very well done. And the idea of that being passed on to his kids, are they also going to go through this very same experience, I think is very interesting. Yeah, it's dark, but kids can handle, darker, more serious themes. I think sometimes we don't give kids enough credit when it comes to that stuff. But also based on the key art that they've provided, Mel isn't frozen like a black mage in FF9 is frozen when they pass on. Like, Mel is literally in a crystal. So perhaps a bad guy has shown up for whatever reason, is focusing on the black mages. That could also be part of that story for all we know. But this is pretty interesting, and it's cool to finally see this come to fruition. Again, it had a very troubled development cycle with that other French studio, and for the longest time, it kind of seemed like it was done. It wasn't going to happen, but it found a new home. Their development of the show has just started, so hopefully things go smoothly. I hope the story is good. I know, again, that it's aimed at children, but you can do TV shows, whether they're animated or live action, that are aimed at children but don't speak down to them and treat them and the rest of the audience like they're dumb. So I hope it's good. And it's a cool opportunity to see some of the other cast of Final Fantasy IX show up. Will Zidane be there? Steiner? Dagger? How far after the events of FF9 is the story going to take place? Pretty cool. I'll keep up with this. And again, crossing my fingers, I just hope it's good. Up next, we move on to that very interesting tweet from Naoki Hamaguchi, where he talks about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth receiving more updates in the future on the PlayStation 5. And this is all happening because Sony recently released version 2 of PSSR, which is their own upscaling technology used to boost the visuals and performance of their PlayStation games. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Silent Hill F, Ghost of Yotei, a number of games received that PSSR boost, and man, was it good. Not all games looked great, but Rebirth was a shining example of when it's done right, it really improves the visual fidelity and performance of your game. And boy, does PSSR version 2 do that for Rebirth, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll read the quote from Hamaguchi where he writes, "Have you had a chance to check out the new PSSR upscaling on PS5 Pro? We have more improvements planned for the PS5 version of Rebirth, so we hope you're looking forward to what's coming next." So that, to me, super interesting. What further updates could they bring to Rebirth? And what I think is really interesting is that he just says PS5. He doesn't specifically note PS5 Pro, he just says PS5. So we know that Hamaguchi and the team have been working on improvements for Rebirth ever since the PC version. They've optimized it quite a bit. There's the Switch 2 and Xbox versions. So I'm sure they've learned a lot over the years developing these games and porting them, and they've found ways to take those improvements and re-implement them into the PS5 version. And one of those changes that we know is coming, I believe, in June, alongside the launch of Rebirth on Switch 2 and Xbox, are those PC lighting updates, which the PC version of Rebirth, when you get it up and running perfectly, which can be a bit of a coin toss depending on, how your rig is, it looks beautiful. The texture work is great. There's no pop in. The lighting is very well done, especially within the cutscenes, because of course it's fine-tuned for those cutscenes to look just right. It really is a beautiful game. And for Hamaguchi and the team to be like, okay, we found these improvements and we would love to bring them to other versions of this game. He's really stressed that in interviews about how he wants to make sure that no matter where you play these games, you're having a comparable experience. There shouldn't be a really big drop off from system to system. You want to make sure that you have a great time playing Rebirth, whether it's on a high-end PC or a Switch 2 or now base PS5. So I'm trying to think of what other updates could be headed their way to PS5. The big one, and I really hope this is it. It might not be, because it might just be an engine thing, but I'm really hoping that they found a way to fix that texture pop-in that happens pretty prominently on the PlayStation 5 version of Rebirth, whether you're on base PS5 or on a Pro. And the PC version seemingly doesn't really have that issue. Again, it's kind of up and down depending on your rig, but from what I can tell, the texture pop-in seems to be mostly non-existent for most people on the PC version. Although that's just anecdotal based on what I've seen. If you're someone out there that does have a PC, you do play Rebirth on there, and you're still having those texture issues, let me know in the comments down below. But I would hope maybe that's the other improvement that they hope to bring, because I can't really imagine what other improvements they could bring to Rebirth on PlayStation 5, especially with, the base version. So unless they found ways to increase the resolution, the frame rate, all of that stuff was pretty stable in the base version. Obviously, there was the blurriness too in the base version of PS5. Maybe they found a way to fix that too. It's very intriguing though. But I'm sure they've discovered a lot of fixes for things over the development cycle for Rebirth on these ports that Hamaguchi will, eventually bring to the PS5. But that's pretty cool. And it's really great that Hamaguchi and the team are continuing to support all versions of Rebirth. They could have easily been like, okay, Rebirth, it's out there, it's on PS5, it's got its problems, but we're going to move on to the next game. It's like, no, you want to go back and whatever improvements that you found, you can now apply them, and hopefully it makes the game better. Now, speaking of PSSR version 2, that update came out recently, and Hamaguchi and the team went back and created a different patch for Rebirth to utilize the PSSR v2 much better. And the footage you're seeing in this video is Rebirth PSSR version 2 at 4K 60 frames per second, but unfortunately, because my computer is not great and I can't render footage at 4K or 2K, it's been downscaled to 1080 60. So I unfortunately can't properly convey just how much better Rebirth looks with this new PSSR version 2 patch. You'll have to go to people like Digital Foundry, Maximilian Dude, people who are known for putting out higher quality content to really appreciate just how much better the visuals are. But that is the footage that you'll be seeing in this video. Recorded it, brand new, hopefully it looks good. And to me, this was a pretty big noticeable upgrade. It wasn't a situation where I activated PSSR version 2 and then booted up Rebirth and I was like, oh yeah, this looks nice. It was like, oh wait, hang on a second. This is like an actual noticeable upgrade to the hair, how it's rendered. The textures, apparently from what I've heard, might have been swapped out for even higher quality textures, or it may have been a situation where the textures themselves were high quality, but you couldn't properly convey it without PSSR v2 to actually clean up the image and convey like, hey, these are the textures we've been using for a while. Now you're really going to start to see just how good visually it all looks. So I've captured some moments in this footage. It's primarily combat, but there are a few sections where I just went into photo mode and focused on Cloud, looked at all of the details again in his hair, which looks phenomenal. The damage on his shoulder pauldron, the detail in the Buster Sword, it looks like there's more there. Visually though, it just looks really, really good. It looks sharper. There are areas that just look prettier. The foliage looks better. Of course, it's not perfect. There's issues with, how the texture stuff still pops in, which is more apparent on PSSR v2 because it looks so much better and the texture work is seemingly more improved. You do notice that texture pop in way more now, which is unfortunate, but again, crossing my fingers that Hamaguchi and the team found a way to fix that, hopefully in the future. This bodes very well for part 3 because I expect part 3 to have not a huge visual leap. It'll still probably look similar to Rebirth, but again, with all of the improvements they've made from porting Remake and Rebirth to now developing part 3, all of that in combination with PSSR v2 and DLSS on the PC side of things, I think part 3 could look stunning, especially if they incorporate a fix for the texture pop-ins and better lighting. Part 3 could look phenomenal, and part 3 is going to have some of the biggest, most diverse looking locations, from going underwater, going back to Junon, the different materia caves, the Great Glacier area, going back to an expanded Forgotten Capital section, the Sleeping Forest, which I'm super excited to go through the Sleeping Forest. There's also, the Northern Crater inside of the planet, Rocket Town, Wutai. I think these locations are going to benefit greatly from this new technology. And even if you don't have a Pro, again, based on what Hamaguchi's been saying for the longest time, I think no matter what you play part 3 on, whether it's a base PS5, a Pro, a Switch 2, PC, Xbox, I think it will look remarkably better and perform better as well. So hopefully base PS5 won't be super blurry. Hopefully they can fix the texture pop-in. And this is how upscaling with AI should be done. PSSR version 1 and 2, DLSS before version 5, where the tech just works with the software, the game, its assets, and the hardware that it's on to boost the performance in the visuals. Run at a lower internal resolution, but upscale it. Make sure those textures look nice. Make sure the hair, everything's looking good and performing well. I've just been seeing everything that's been coming out over these past couple of days in regards to DLSS version 5, and it just looks so bad. And I'm not jumping on the bandwagon here. That was my initial thought when I saw the thumbnail from Digital Foundry, which featured Grace from Resident Evil Requiem. And on the left was her regular character model, and on the right looked like a generative AI Grace. And I was confused. I'm like, hang on, are they clickbaiting people to get views on this video? And then I started watching it and I saw, no, this is footage directly from NVIDIA, and it looked really bad. Now, I know it's not using a generative AI filter, but it is using generative AI at its core of what this technology is. Thus, the image that it's rendering looks like bad generative AI slop. It looks like, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen these videos that pop up and you're recommended on YouTube. It's like, this is what a next-gen Final Fantasy VIII would look like, or next-gen Final Fantasy IX. And it's just this awful generative AI slop. And I even see it on TikTok where people are like, I recreated the Avengers in a 1980s dark fantasy setting. And it's just this. It's so ugly and lifeless. And this is going to sound like hyperbole, and I don't mean for it to, because this is genuinely how I feel. It's unsettling to look at. my brain saw that version of Grace. It saw the characters from the Hogwarts game, Starfield, and my brain is like, this looks bad. I don't like looking at this. It makes me kind of angry and sick because what essentially this technology is doing, at least at this stage, there's a possibility maybe 5 years from now it actually looks better. I don't know. I can only judge based on what I've seen so far. And it looks like, again, it's just applying a generative AI filter, which I know it's not doing, but the image it's producing looks like that. And it's completely erasing the art design and that artistic vision that the developers had for their characters, for their clothing, for the environment. It looks so uncanny and my brain sees it and it's like, I don't like this. This does not look natural. It doesn't look like a video game anymore. And I looked at it and one of my first reactions was like, it just looks like they yassified everyone. Like Grace now looks like a completely different character. Her hair isn't what it looked like in Requiem. It's like dyed now. She's got fuller lips. It looks like they applied a bunch of makeup. And I've seen some posts online from people saying, well, now she looks more like the model that they based her off of, which sure, but that's not the point. Because when Capcom makes these games, they usually, for the English side of things, will hire 2 actors. One person to base the likeness of the character on, the other actor provides the performance, the voice, the motion capture. But even then, they're not just using the likeness of the model for their character. They're going in and using it as a base and then tweaking things further to get much closer to their artistic vision of what they want this character to be. And when you see this beautified version of Grace, it doesn't match the story that they're telling. And in motion, it just does not look right, in my opinion. People were joking and it looks exactly like this, but it looks like when those chuds on Twitter complain that a female character isn't hot enough, so they quote unquote fix the character. We've all seen that picture of Aloy where it's regular Aloy and then it's this like photoshopped glossy version of her, which looks nothing like the character. She's got a ton of makeup on, lipstick. It's just ridiculous. That's what Grace looked like. It's like, what are they doing? So there's been so much backlash to this, rightfully so. Unfortunately, the CEO of NVIDIA is like, no, you guys are wrong. What we're doing is cool, which it's just so frustrating, whether it's in gaming or technology or other, industries, to see these executives, the CEOs, who are seemingly so out of touch with what the average person actually wants. It's really frustrating. And to see them have that much power and money, it just makes me mad, man. And I've seen some people say, well, Capcom signed off on this. These other studios signed off on it. Yeah, the executives at those companies did. But as far as we know, the developers who actually make these games, the people with the actual artistic vision, probably didn't. And they're probably not very happy about what this is doing to the visual integrity of their games, because it's going in and essentially acting like it knows better than what the developers do. Oh, we're going to change your character. We think this looks better. We're going to change the lighting. And that's another thing, is the lighting in these demos. It looks bad because this engine, this DLSS V5, doesn't know where the light should be. So it messes up the shadows. It messes up the color grading. All of that art design is now just gone out the window. And that's what really upsets me most, is you have, whether it's Capcom, Square Enix, whatever company, you can think of, the people that make these games are, artists. They have artistic visions. And the people who are higher up, those executives and CEOs, in my opinion, don't know what any of that is. They wouldn't know an artistic vision if it came and slapped them in the face. All they care about is money and numbers and pushing this AI tech further without thinking about the people that actually make these games, which to me is super frustrating. And we have development teams out there that have proved that you can do photorealistic visuals, but it still looks like a game. It has proper art design. It has proper shadows and lighting. Great examples are Death Stranding games. 2 in particular looks phenomenal. Norman Reedus is Norman Reedus, but it looks good because it's handcrafted by an actual person and it has an art design. The Last of Us games have very photorealistic characters and it looks good because it's handcrafted. It's not using this, upscaling that is relying on generative AI. So it's just really, really frustrating. And that's the big difference between this version 5 of DLSS and all of the previous versions, or something like the Pisser tech. Again, DLSS prior to this and Pisser are relying on the hardware, relying on the game and its assets and boosting it up. Whereas this is seemingly trained on who knows what kind of stuff out there, and then creating a generative image that just looks really, really bad, in my opinion. But hopefully this just reinforces how vital the artists who make these games are. Art direction always trumps graphics. I would take a game with a beautiful, interesting art style over a game that just has really pretty graphics. Although sometimes you get lucky and you have a game that can do both, like the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, Ghost of Yotei and Tsushima, Death Stranding. That's just my personal opinion, and I will now step off of my soapbox because I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to be ranted at. You've probably been seeing this stuff everywhere, but considering what we were talking about in today's video, just kind of felt appropriate to include that in there as well. But you guys know my thoughts on AI. If you've watched my other videos, I'll summarize it. It's clearly not going anywhere. I'm not a big fan of it. I can't stand the generative stuff, but if it can be used as a tool to help assist people with the more tedious stuff, that I'm okay with. But it should never be something that replaces a person or their vision. That to me can fuck off. Sorry for the swearing. It just makes me angry. With that being said, that's the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below, what are you guys thinking so far about Black Mage's Legacy? Does it sound exciting to you? Will you be checking it out when it debuts? And what do you think so far of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth continuing to receive updates on the PS5? And is there a specific upgrade that you're hoping Rebirth receives on the PS5, whether it's a fix for the textures or maybe something I didn't mention in the video? I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.